Good evening. I'd like to call the special Board of Education meeting for Monday, January 30th, 2017 to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Mr. Alexandrovich.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mrs. Larson.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
And I am here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Pats?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on the agenda is the meeting format. I'm Janet Evans, I'm the board president, and I'd like to welcome all the candidates to the meeting tonight. And I'd like to introduce my fellow board colleagues. We have board member Debbie Larson, board member Jeff Lewis, board clerk Alan Alexandrovich, and board vice president Tim Nielsen, and board treasurer Mrs. Linda Witkowski. We also have Dr. Steve Patz, our superintendent, and we have Megan Dade, who is our communications coordinator, who will be helping us out tonight. And I'm going to take a few minutes to go over the board format for the meeting. We're going to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourselves and let us know how you would like us to address you tonight when you're up here for your interview. And then, out of respect for each candidate, we're going to ask if you wouldn't mind leaving the room to go over to the, it's not a cafeteria, it's the break room, okay, while each candidate gives their interview to us. And while you are giving your interview, each board member is going to ask you, after you give yourself a little introduction, an individual question. And that same question will be asked of each candidate. So there'll be no separate questions for the candidate. After all the interview questions, after you do give your interview to us, you'll be asked, again, out of respect to the other candidates, to go back to the break room, and then the next candidate will be asked to come in. This will be done alphabetically. After all the interview questions are asked, then the board's going to take just a quick little break, a little recess. Then you'll all be asked to come back into the room while we have a board discussion, and then the board will take action. And the board vote will be done by a majority vote, which means for a candidate to be appointed, we'll need 4 votes. And if the board does not appoint an individual tonight, in other words, if it's a tie or we just can't come to a decision, we have 60 days from the time that the vacancy came up for appointment. And if we are not able to make an appointment, then the board will go without an appointment until the 2018 spring election. So there is a possibility that someone may not get appointed if we can't come to a decision. Are there any questions? Any questions from the board? Okay, then at this time, we're going to ask that the candidates go over to the break room, except for, I'm sorry, go back to introductions. So let's start with the first row. Just your name and how you'd like to be introduced, that's all.
I'm Larry Gamble, prefer to be called Larry. First name's William, as far as the government knows. 25 years in the military, and that's the way they do me, but I prefer Larry.
Okay, thank you. And the next row.
Michelle Langery. From Michelle.
Okay.
I'm Angie Beer. You can call me Angie. My formal title is doctor.
Okay.
Candace Rue, and Candace is fine.
Okay.
Stating for the record, Adam Scanlon, school board candidate for the April election as well. Adam is perfect.
Thank you.
John Thompson. John.
All right. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay. Now we will ask you to help yourselves in the break room. I heard there's some snacks for you there, and then we'll ask Angie to come on and take a seat up here at the desk.
Well, I'm a bee, so.
Hi, welcome.
Hello.
We might. Okay, how are you tonight?
I'm fine, how are you?
Good.
Good.
And you can give us an opening statement if you
Sure.
like.
So my name is Angie Beer. I grew up over near Janesville, Wisconsin. I'm from a family of educators. Education has always been important to my family and to myself. I did my medical training at the Medical College of Wisconsin before going to Arizona to complete my medical training. I returned to Wisconsin about 8 years ago. We settled in Franklin largely due to the excellent quality of the schools here. I have 2 children who are currently in elementary school in Franklin. I left the practice of medicine about 2 years ago for a variety of reasons, which none of us have time to go into this evening. But at that time, I was looking for ways to continue to give back to my community, as that aspect of my practice had always been important to me. I immersed myself in a variety of volunteer opportunities, and over time have found that my skills might be used in better ways. I think that this could be an excellent opportunity both for myself, and I think that I have certain qualities that could potentially be useful to the board. So
Thank you.
that's my story.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just have one thing I'd like to ask Ms. Dade. Would you mind going to the break room? And I noticed there was one citizen here, I think that was Larry Gamble's wife. She's not required to be over there if she'd like to come in and sit here. Thank you.
You wait for Megan, or?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we're going to start with school board questions then.
Sure.
And we'll start with Mrs. Larson.
Okay, good evening.
Hi.
As a board member, you will be asked to make decisions where you must put aside what is best for you, your family, or your personal acquaintances, and to do what is best not only for our students, but for our district as well. Please give an example of a time when you were asked to make such a decision and how you went about making that decision.
It's always difficult to come up with these personal examples on the spur of the moment. I'm going to go back to my time in medicine. I was frequently called upon to miss family gatherings, miss my child's first recital for violin because I was on call taking care of patients. I think that's a much more simplistic example because clearly that was my job and my not my filial duty, but my duty to my patients obviously came first. But in terms of putting aside personal desires and a desire to always do what is best for my children, I'm perhaps too used to doing that, some would say. Once when my daughter drew a family picture, she included a picture of my pager as a member of our family, so.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lewis.
As a board member, do you see yourself primarily as a representative of the community or as a representative of the school system?
I think starting out, my assumption is that I'm primarily going to be a representative of the community to the school system, but I have a feeling that as I would learn more about the inner workings of the school district and decisions that are being made, I would hope that that relationship could begin to flow the opposite way, and I could, over time, more thoughtfully be a representative back to my community of decisions being made at the district level. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure I was,
It does.
okay.
Mr. Alexandrovich.
I'm going to pass.
Okay, thank you. Okay. In 2011, Governor Walker introduced Wisconsin Act 10, which primarily impacted collective bargaining, compensation, retirement, health insurance, and sick leave of public sector employees. The legislation and 2012 petition to recall Walker have been controversial issues in past Franklin School Board elections, and thus far, our electors have not elected a candidate who signed the petition, which is public record. Several of the candidates for the vacant board seat have signatures that appear on the recall petition. As a school board member charged with the oversight of policy and budgets, I'm often asked by stakeholders whether the board is utilizing all the potential savings provided by Act 10. What is your stance on Wisconsin Act 10 and its impact on Franklin School District?
Well, I did sign the petition to recall Mr. Walker. I am a registered Democrat in this county, so I don't think my political leanings are a secret to anyone. I do think that I have been disheartened to see the effect that Act 10 has had on morale amongst teachers and feeling of ownership of control within their classrooms. I do not know enough right now to answer whether or not we are taking advantage of all of the financial repercussions in terms of our community. I would need to learn more about that. While Franklin does tend to vote much more conservatively, it is certainly not 100% or even 75% compared to other communities such as Waukesha. So I think having a position perhaps from that point of view isn't necessarily a bad thing. I do like to think that I'm able to engage in intelligent conversations with people with whom I might disagree on sort of the role of government within our communities. I think there's room for intelligent people to disagree and to move forward together. That's certainly been something that I've been trying to model for my children and my colleagues in the last couple of months. It's been tricky.
All right,
No.
thank you.
Hi, Angie.
Hi.
The question I have is there any particular area of the district or emphasis at the board level that you would find yourself most interested in?
I certainly do have an interest in curriculum development in terms of my professional experience. That's something that I have participated in and that I am interested in bringing multiple stakeholders into the process. So if there's ever a call for board representation or community representation in that process, I don't know if there is, but that's certainly an interest I have. I also have an interest in early childhood education, and so if and when discussions come up about expanding Franklin to include a 4K program, that's something I'm passionate about based both on personal feelings and on educational data.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in your opinion, what are the top 3 policy issues in public education today?
Gosh, that's such a big question, especially, did you write your question more than 2 weeks ago? I think that it's certainly a moving target, so policy issues. The idea, law, and how we best educate all children of all abilities to their full potential is certainly something that we continue to struggle with, both at a local and a national level. I would say that appropriate decisions regarding funding of educational alternatives outside of the traditional brick and mortar public school building and where that money should come from, if at all, are a significant issue facing the public in many arenas. And I'm sorry, I don't have a third off the top of my head. I would just be talking. I'm sorry.
That's good.
Okay, well, thank you very much, we
Okay.
appreciate it.
Who shall I send in next?
Larry Gamble.
Larry Gamble.
Thank-
Okay.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Angie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Larry, welcome.
Thank you.
First, we'd like to let you make a statement if you have one.
I didn't actually prepare one.
Okay, or anything you'd like to say that you didn't include in your application?
I
Or,
pretty much included everything in there. 20-year resident of Franklin, put 3 kids through the public school system here. I thought they did a great job with it. And this has given me a chance that I could give something back to the community.
okay, thank you. All right, then we're going to start with board questions. And first, we'll start with Mr. Lewis.
Hi, Larry. As a board member, do you see yourself primarily as a representative of the community or as a representative of the school system?
Primarily, you're representing your constituents. because you do have to support and defend your schools.
Okay, thank you. Okay. In 2011, Governor Walker introduced Wisconsin Act 10, which primarily impacted collective bargaining, compensation, retirement, health insurance, and sick leave of public sector employees. The legislation and the 2012 petition to recall Walker have been controversial issues in past Franklin School Board elections, and thus far, our electors have not elected a candidate who signed the petition, which is public record. Several of the candidates for the vacant board seat have signatures that appear on the recall petition. As a school board member charged with the oversight of policy and budgets, I am often asked by stakeholders whether the board is utilizing all of the potential savings provided by Act 10. What is your stance on Wisconsin Act 10 and its impact on Franklin Public School District?
I can't say that I know exactly what Act 10's done for the school district, but having been in government service myself, as a manager, as a commander in the military, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers to be as efficient as possible. And in line with that, where there are savings that can be made without causing great hardships, those should be done. And much like in the private sector, people should contribute towards their benefits.
Anything? Are you finished?
Larry?
Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, hi. Is there any particular area of the district or emphasis at the board level that you would find yourself interested in and focusing on?
That's probably the one thing I'm least prepared to answer.
Uh-oh.
Being involved in the district, and since my kids finished school, obviously my overview of the schools and going to the schools fell off. Both of my daughters were in the cheer squad. My son he did a lot of after-school stuff, but no team sports. So the last 3 years have been not exactly the forefront of what I'm watching. But one of my passions kind of comes back to my military experience, plus having been an airline pilot, a flight instructor, are the sciences and technologies. And promoting those. I just saw that the 7th graders won an award from Future Cities, and I think that's outstanding. It's giving kids something that will motivate them, help them learn, give them a reason to explore, learn more, and I think that's the future. That's where we have to go. I noticed that U.S. News and World Report ranks Franklin High School 806 in the nation, 15th in the state. And I think that's really good. My college is ranked #1 in the South, but that's neither here nor there, but it's room for improvement. And I think the way we get that improvement is starting in the younger grades with the sciences and making it interesting and then moving them into more of the technologies and advancing as they progress through through school to high school and beyond.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, in your opinion, what are the top 3 policy issues in public education today? Federal level, state level, local level?
The one I hear on the radio occasionally is school funding. We just went through a round of referendums around the state. I think it was time. We have to look forward at what our projected needs are, what our facility use is, and the condition of our facilities. And the funding the schools, funding the infrastructure that makes our schools is always going to be at the top. And so if I had to rank what we need are, in my view, would be quality teaching, quality facilities, and for the third, it's something, how we're going to motivate the kids and keep them motivated to learn.
All right, thank you very much.
Debbie.
Oh, Debbie, I'm sorry. Sorry, Debbie.
Heather.
I forgot to do it.
Good evening. As a board member, you will be asked to make decisions where you must put aside what is best for you, your family, or your personal acquaintances, and do what is best not only for our students, but for our district as well. Please give an example of a time when you were asked to make such a decision and how you went about making that decision.
There's a couple of ways I could answer that. One is, when I was going through as a flight instructor trying to get an airline job, and it was right after the first Gulf War. Eastern had just gone out of business, Pan Am was out of business, and there was a glut of pilots on the street. Nobody was hiring. I went, a guy I knew who had told me, as soon as you get off active duty, come see me, you got the hours, now to fly cargo, it's 1,200 hours. And I had just over that number. After being released from my mobilization for the first Gulf War, went back to see him, needed a job. Flight school I was working for had gone under during that time. And he just looked at me straight in the eye and says, I've got guys with 10,000 hours that want this job. My insurance company knows that. They won't even let me interview and consider somebody with less than 2,500 hours. So at that point, I had to make a decision on what's best for my family or my passion of flying. And I was able to get a position with the Air Force Reserves full-time. It took me out of flying. I didn't think I'd ever make it to be an airline pilot, and I spent several years doing that, but at the time, that was the best thing to put aside my dream of being an airline pilot to take care of my family. It may not be quite what you were looking for, but that was a hard decision for me to make.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Michelle.
Read.
She gets my question.
Come up with something.
If you want water, help yourself.
Hi, Michelle.
How are you?
We're good. How are you doing?
I probably do not need a mic, but okay.
First, would you like to make any statement to us?
Sure, I'm Michelle Leahy-Reed, been in Franklin since 2007. Have 4 kids. Jackson's an 8th grader at Forest Park. Reagan is a 6th grader at Robinwood. And Addison and Abigail are 3, so on their way to Franklin schools. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Okay, I'm going to give the first question. In 2011, Governor Walker introduced Wisconsin Act 10, which primarily impacted collective bargaining, compensation, retirement, health insurance, and sick leave for public sector employees. The legislation and the 2012 petition to recall Walker have been controversial issues in past Franklin School Board elections, and thus far, our electors have not elected a candidate who signed the petition, which is public record. Several of the candidates for the vacant board seat have signatures that appear on the recall petition. As a school board member charged with the oversight of policy and budgets, I am often asked by stakeholders whether the board is utilizing all of the potential savings provided by Act 10. What is your stance on Wisconsin Act 10 and its impact on Franklin Public School District?
That is a very lawyer-written question. I'm looking at Jeff. Wow, that is extremely detailed. Act 10 did make a huge difference, not just to our district, but I think to Wisconsin in general. The biggest change I see is maybe the attitude of some of our teachers, the way in which their benefits have changed, or the way in which their culture has changed. Some of the teachers have been around for years, and this was a dramatic change for them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Michelle. My question is, any particular area of the district or emphasis at the board level that you are interested in focusing on?
I think I have interest in all the committees, except for I don't want to be treasurer. I'm not the dollars and cents girl. I can barely balance my own checkbook, so I don't want to be in charge of balancing anyone else's. Any of the other committees, I would love to be a part of.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, all right, the next one. So, in your opinion, what are the top 3 policy issues in public education today?
Top 3 issues in public education. So I'm going to go, you want detail, or you just want me to list the 3?
Just 3,
List
right?
3? I'm going to go with bullying and diversity and 4K programs.
Thank you. Mrs. Larson?
Good evening. As a board member, you will be asked to make decisions where you must put aside what is best for you, your family, or your personal acquaintances, and do what is best not only for our students, but for our district as well. Please give an example of a time when you were asked to make such a decision and how you went about making that decision.
I make those decisions every day. I don't have a friend-making job. I work as an attorney inside a hospital. So when I show up in a patient's room and I say I'm a lawyer, they're like, oh, I'm so excited to see you. I'm so mad at X, Y, Z. And then in the next breath, I tell them, like, I'm not there for them. I'm there on behalf of the hospital. So I think this role is very similar. Like, this is not a friend-making position. You're doing what's best for the district, what's best for these kids, not what's best for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Michelle. As a board member, do you see yourself primarily as a representative of the community or as a representative of the school system?
I'd like to think a representative of both, but I'm leaning more towards the school system. As you know, I've been on the Educational Foundation going on 4 years, currently serving as secretary. So I've kind of immersed myself as much as I can in the schools, been on the PTOs, on PTAs. I say only having 2 kids within the district, keeping myself present because there are 2 more coming up, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much for answering the questions.
Thanks. Thanks.
Hi, Candace.
I brought a resume. Should I give that to you, or is that necessary?
You can give it if you like. And then we're just going to ask you if you'd like to make a statement. Would anyone like to, we only have 1 copy, would anyone like to see this right away?
Just pass it down.
Sure, if you don't mind. Okay, go ahead if you'd like to make a statement.
I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited to hear about the vacancy, because I do have 3 children who are in the school district right now, and 1 who is at Southwood Glen, 1 at the middle school, and 1 in high school. And I believe that my background would lend itself well to the board, and I do certainly believe in quality education for all of the children, especially those here in the Franklin community.
Okay, then we'll start with questions, and Mrs. Witkowski? Oh,
Mr. Nielsen.
I'll go ahead and start.
who went fast?
You did.
I did? Okay, you're right.
Hello.
Losing track.
Is there any particular area of the district or emphasis at the board level that you would find yourself most interested in focusing on?
I think that I've been reviewing some of the documents that are online around the policies and the different pieces, and I think that's something that is really important as the area of staff engagement. And so I think that that's an area that I'd like to focus on as as we move forward, because I think with an engaged staff, you have better engaged students, which can relate to an overall successful district.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm up next. So, in your opinion, what are the top 3 policy issues in public education today?
Oh goodness, the top 3 issues in public education. So I think that I'm gonna go through my notes here too that I've taken as I've pulled some thoughts together. I think that some of the policy issues, like I said, are promoting the engagement of both parents and staff, and making sure that we have open doors and communication there. I think that it's important to hear multiple vantage points and communication from the parents and the student staff members as well. And I think that it's important to really balance taxpayer needs with the needs of the district as well. And as a homeowner and taxpayer in the community, as a single mom, finances are critically important to me. It's never a good feeling when you find out that your taxes are increasing, but when you balance that against what's good for the community, I think that's important too. So that balance is critically important as well.
Good evening. As a board member, you will be asked to make decisions where you must put aside what is best for you, your family, or your personal acquaintances, and do what is best not only for our students, but for our district as well. Please give an example of a time when you were asked to make such a decision and how you went about making that decision.
It's a really great question. This is something that I face in my professional world every day. I work in a highly collaborative environment. I have 17 years of experience, like I mentioned, with Northwestern Mutual, and the area that I work in is all about setting strategy and rolling out different pilots and programs on behalf of a field force. So taking into account what my individual feelings about a certain program might be, it's important to make sure that we have the right people at the table who are having the right conversations so we can see what the consequences of our decisions would be, what the programs would be, as well as the unintended consequences, what those may be also. And I think that through ongoing collaboration, dialogue, continuous feedback, we're able to make sound decisions and execute on behalf of what the interest of the program is. In addition to that, I think that collaborating, facilitating meaningful dialogue, and then putting your money where your mouth is when it comes down to it is of utmost importance.
Thank you.
Hi, Candace. As a board member, do you see yourself primarily as a representative of the community or as a representative of the school system?
Great question. I think when I first started looking at this, I thought it's mostly representative of the community. Then I had some questions. There's balance in both. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's both and. As I started doing some research, and I had some really great conversations with different people in the community, people who've held board positions, people on education council, they echo to me that the primary role on the school board would be to make policy and to hire the superintendent and to partner and make those choices on behalf of the community. So I think that it's representing the policies of the district, but it's not an either or. It has to come along with balancing the needs of the community also.
Thank you.
In 2011, Governor Walker introduced Wisconsin Act 10, which primarily impacted collective bargaining, compensation, retirement, health insurance, and sick leave of public sector employees. This legislation and the 2012 petition to recall Walker have been controversial issues in past Franklin School Board elections, and thus far our electors have not elected a candidate who signed the petition, which is public record. Several of the candidates for the vacant board seat have signatures that appear on the recall petition. As a school board member charged with the oversight of policy and budgets, I am often asked by stakeholders whether the board is utilizing all of the potential savings provided by Act 10. What is your stance on Wisconsin Act 10 and its impact on the Franklin Public School District?
So we're talking about the Act 10, specifically the rescinding of the bargaining, collective bargaining?
That's one portion of it, yeah. Mhm.
Well, and that look at
Yeah.
these along with that. So I grew up in a union household. My dad was very pro-union. They're also very conservative. me, I am a personal believer that citizens should be allowed to have unions and bargain collectively on behalf of the greater good. I do, however, understand the flip side of that, where there may be a fiscal need to draw pieces back. And I think that the question is a good one, right? We need to be held accountable to what our fiscal standards are and make sure that we're using our money wisely on behalf of the entire district. So my personal belief is that there's a way to fairly and honestly assess and use the resources that are available there, but also make sure that people's voices are heard and that people are treated fairly with respect and dignity in the process as well. I'm also a certified mediator, so when I was on the Graduate Assistant Association at UWM, we spent a lot of time in the collective bargaining process, and I firmly believe that there's opportunity to hear all voices at the table and make sound decisions.
Thank you. If the board doesn't mind, can I ask for elaboration on one point to Mr. Nielsen's question?
Certainly.
You said staff engagement. Can you just elaborate on what you mean by staff engagement?
Okay, so
As a board member, what you would mean by staff engament?
I'm rewinding to what the question.
May I read the question?
Sure.
How about that? Any particular area of the district, district or emphasis at the board level that you are interested in focusing on?
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Mhm.
So from a staff engagement perspective, what I mean by that is when you have staff members, teachers, people who are employed by the district or within the district who feel engaged and valued, I think that that translates over into how the students are impacted and then ultimately what happens in the classroom and then beyond that in our community. So I think we can't underestimate the importance of the engagement of those people.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is that all?
That's it?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you. Hi,
Hello.
Adam. How are you today? I'm good. Okay, first we'd like to give you an opportunity to make a statement if you'd like.
First and foremost, again, Adam, obviously the only citizen aside from Tim and Linda who declared candidacy for the upcoming election. I think that speaks volumes to my dedication and my interest in really wanting to be on the school board. As I mentioned in a couple of my documents, father within the district. I have experience in private sector. I also have experience in education. I think that background proves very valuable to me. I have experience with law and litigation within higher education, within college, and also have the experience within being a teacher as well as an administrator. And I hope that through my answers tonight and through what you've learned from me, you see that brings a balanced experience and background to the board if you so choose to move forward with me as a candidate.
Thank you. And we'll start with questions. Mrs. Witkowski?
Okay, first, in your opinion, what are the top three policy issues in public education today?
Top three policy issues. I think that one of the first policy issues in education that I would mention is teacher pay, whether it's merit-based, whether it's achievement-based, whether it's, however it may be. That drives a lot of it. As things are ever shifting within the political climate, especially in Wisconsin, I think that drives uneasiness within educators. And having a board that supports them, superintendent that supports them, and is transparent is very important to me. Second policy that I think is very important are the various policies and following accreditations for high school credit, whether it be AP classes, whether it be within AP classes, we'd like kids to take them. If they don't take them, then they may suffer not being in an honors class, and it hurts their GPA, which in a different turn ends up hurting them getting into colleges. And when we begin to look at educational best practice and we look at standards referenced things and knowing what's best practice for students to achieve highly in the district versus what's easy to report out on a number-based system, I think that's something that is an ongoing conversation and needs to always be discussed. And the third policy was in education that I would mention that I think is an issue would be where funds are allocated in terms of where funds are allocated and ensuring that the funds that are allocated towards things that increase student achievement. I know that within a board there's a budget, but there's also a smaller amount that's discretionary and in terms of what you can actually shift around. But ensuring that the process you go through is equating to student success is vital to what I believe.
Thank you.
Good evening. As a board member, you will be asked to make decisions where you must put aside what is best for you, your family, or your personal acquaintances, and do what is best not only for our students, but for our district as well. Please give an example of a time when you were asked to make such a decision and how you went about making that decision.
Over the last 3 years, I've had various administrative leadership positions within education. Prior to that, I was a front-end manager for Roundy's Corporation. I've been in leadership positions for over a decade now. Most recently, in terms of doing that as an assistant principal this year, and transitioning out of the classroom, being able to see the scope and sequence overall of the district has been very eye-opening for me. And a decision that we've made very recently is there's a program called PBIS, Positive Behavioral Intervention System. And at the classroom level, at the 5th grade level, it was very easy to say, well, 5th graders don't buy into this, 5th graders don't like this. And I only saw me. I very humbly would say I didn't know, what it looked like overall. And being in a leadership position now and seeing more of the K-12 sequence as to how things go, I've come in and I've helped implement both a Tier 1 and a Tier 2 fidelity this year and have helped teachers who may not have 100% buy-in with an educational decision that's been made, but I've stuck by it regardless of the pushback, knowing that it's what's best for students and knowing that the data and the best practice shows that that's going to help the students overall.
Thank you.
Hi, Adam. As a board member, do you see yourself primarily as a representative of the community or as a representative of the school system?
Those go hand in hand. I would view myself in each of those things dependent on what area I'm at. If I'm at Franklin Night Out, I'm a member of the community, but I'm always presenting a united front as a member of the school board. If I am coming on opening day and, Dr. Pats is introducing us, then, I'm there as the face of the school board. I don't know if you're looking for a very specific one. I honestly don't know if I could delineate between the two because this is so intertwined and this is a position that requires you to be a citizen within the community. And I fully believe with my heart that is very ingrained. More than anything, as overall, typically it's an elected position. I would say that you're elected on behalf of the community, and I would say I represent the school. I represent the school board, I represent that community throughout.
Thank you.
Okay. In 2011, Governor Walker introduced Wisconsin Act 10, which primarily impacted collective bargaining, compensation, retirement, health insurance, and sick leave of public sector employees. The legislation and the 2012 petition to recall Walker have been controversial issues in past Franklin School Board elections, and thus far, our electors have not elected a candidate who signed the petition, which is public record. Several of the candidates for the vacant board seat have signatures that appear on the recall petition. As a school board member charged with the oversight of policy and budgets, I am often asked by stakeholders whether the board is utilizing all of the potential savings provided by Act 10. What is your stance on Wisconsin Act 10 and its impact on Franklin Public School District?
I believe that Act 10 was rushed through and that there were a lot of items in it that I would have asked for for more discussion on and asked for alternative items. I was somebody who signed the petition because of that, because of something where it directly impacted me as a personal person. I think a vital part of the school board, though, is that you are able to differentiate and delineate between those two things. It is one thing to have something that affects you on a personal basis at home. It is a different thing to be able to be a part of a board that makes decisions as a group, that makes decisions as a group of 7, not as a single person who's trying to rock the boat or not. It's important to present a united front. With that's a long question. I want to make sure I answer it. With Act 10, it ultimately what it opened up and what I would hope to work on with as a school board is that it did allow teachers to opt in or out of collective bargaining agreements, and it allowed them to choose who they were represented by. And again, that community, that cohesion, them being able to have that and still have a member as Franklin has, they still have I think it's FEA, the Franklin Educators Association, represent them. I think speaks volumes that the school board is willing to work in tandem and also maintain a fiscally responsible bottom line to move the district forward.
Thank you.
I hope I answered every part of that. If there's any clarifications you need, let me know.
It's your choice to answer it how you wish, so,
I
yeah.
don't remember if I...
That's fine, thank you.
Fine. Hi, Adam. Is there any particular area of the district or emphasis at the board level that you are most interested in focusing on?
I'm glad you asked that. That's something I was hoping. I was like, how would they ask a question like that? There's 2 things that are really important to me, both as a member of the community as well as within my profession. One thing that I would love to work with the community on is, especially as the referendum goes through and we begin to allocate more space, is a 4K program. We're one of only a few school districts in the entire state that does not have one. But I also don't want to take away from the community and the awesome 4K programs that are being utilized right now. Many of the surrounding districts, such as Mugwanago, Elkhorn, Greendale, they're utilizing like the Little Learners and the 4K programs that are there, so they're giving back to the community while also increasing their income for the district, which I think is very beneficial. It's providing both ways. The other thing that I think is absolutely vital, and I've done an action research paper on my 2 master's theses, was about intervention within the elementary classroom. And I would look to make sure that we're allocating funds, again, in an appropriate manner that increases student achievement. Research shows that more people involved with interventions within kindergarten and 1st grade students, if we could ultimately dream, if we can have every student receive an intervention to ensure that they're up to grade level by the end of 1st grade, that is ultimately going to pay off by the time they're reaching senior year. If we're not acknowledging that individuals are behind the curve until 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, research shows that we might be able to catch them for that year, but that ultimately that the learning doesn't stay with them. And so as a school board member, I'd want to work together to see where both of those things, come into financials and, in space and things that aren't always, again, discretion that we can change. But I would look at unique and creative ways that we would be able to help. Again, the bottom line for me is student achievement. Is our district in the top 10%? Is our district doing, what we can do to make sure that our kids are coming out either college ready or career ready? Are they coming out with certifications and seeing machinery or food, whatever it may be, whatever's best for that student? Have we prepared them knowing that we started in kindergarten and not that it's just a focus when they get to high school?
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
One more.
Hi, John. We have water if you need it, and we like to... Okay. We'd like to let you make a statement if you'd like, before we start our questions.
Okay, you want a little bit of, I imagine you read the questionnaire we sent.
Yes.
Do any of you have any questions on what I did? Any questions you want to ask me?
Well, Well, we all, well, not all of us, but most of us have questions to ask you.
Yeah, we're
Well, I
gonna,
know you-
yeah. So we just wanted you to have an opportunity if there's anything you didn't have in there that you thought of you wanted to add.
Questions that we have to ask every person.
Right.
Yeah.
everybody
So,
gets the same
so we
one.
can't be specific to you.
Okay, well, I did 42 years in the military, taught high school for 3 years, 25 years at the sheriff's department, worked as a consulting engineer for 5 years. My wife is a retired teacher from MTS, home economics, or family consumer ed, and then special ed. And I help on the board of directors for the exceptional forest, which is made of special ed students. We take on vacation 1 week of the summer without the parents. So I've had a lot of experience with kids of all different levels. St. John's Cathedral, so I had some on the higher end, some not. Pretty much what you have here. And then with the special ed, I know what the special needs are. And I'm one of the few probably that doesn't have children, so it's just my tax line is going into it.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Larson?
Okay.
All right.
As a board member, you will be asked to make decisions where you must put aside what is best for you, your family, or your personal acquaintances, and do what is best not only for our students, but for our district as well. Please give an example of a time when you were asked to make such a decision and how you went about making that decision.
Well, I've done a lot of those in the military, or even with the sheriff's department. Been married for 38 years, we do it every day. I guess, in the military, a lot of times I'd have my thoughts on what I wanted to do, but I always knew that I had experts. So if they didn't agree with me, I wanted to call them in so I could learn their viewpoint. And a lot of times I changed my mind because everybody has a different viewpoint and way of looking at things. And if you don't look at their point, you have tunnel vision and you don't always pick the best solution. So I used to listen to them and change my mind, and because of that, we ended up with great units and people that supported each other.
Thank you.
Hey, John. As a board member, do you see yourself primarily as a representative of the community or as a representative of the school system?
That's a fine line you're walking. I mean, the school system is important to the community, because this school system is bringing people into the community. And because they're coming in, my property is worth more when it comes to, if it comes to sell it. It's not the tax value, but it's the resellability. I can get more for it than if it wasn't for the school system. And when you look at the kids, for the students, they're our future. We have to invest in them. I mean, they're the ones we're gonna need. They're gonna be our doctors, lawyers, caregivers, whatever we need when we get old, business managers, even employees. So it's a fine line. You gotta spend some money, but you just don't open your books and say, here, take everything you want. So it's hard to walk that line. And I'd have to weigh each issue on its merits and see what it's worth.
Thank you.
Hi, John. In 2011, Governor Walker introduced Wisconsin Act 10, which primarily impacted collective bargaining, compensation, retirement, health insurance, and sick leave of public sector employees. The legislation and the 2012 petition to recall Walker have been controversial issues in past Franklin school board elections, and thus far, our electors have not elected a candidate who signed the petition, which is public record. Several of the candidates for the vacant board seat have signatures that appear on the recall petition. As a school board member charged with the oversight of policy and budgets, I am often asked by stakeholders whether the board is utilizing all of the potential savings provided by Act 10. What is your stance on Wisconsin Act 10 and its impact on the Franklin Public School District?
Well, as you know personally, that's when I ran against you the first time. And that's why I didn't get elected, is because I didn't support Walker. more advantages to not pay the employees and stuff, but you also want to be able to maintain a good employee. You want to keep some health insurance, you want to keep benefits there, so you keep the good employees. I mean, good employees, to get a good teacher takes probably 5 years for a teacher to be really good. The first 5 years that they're learning, it's like an internship for a doctor. And once you get a good teacher, you have to sort of give them some benefits to keep them there. Private business does it all the time. And with that, Ken, I don't think we should just take it as a law saying, okay, we can take away all your benefits and everything. We can keep our taxes in line and use it to do that, but we don't want to strip the whole system of everything that keeps an employee happy and productive.
Thank you.
Hi, John. Any particular area of the district or emphasis at the board level that you would find yourself interested in focusing on?
I like working with the kids. Going out and finding out, probably contacting the staff, getting to know the staff, and seeing what their needs really are. Not what they say they want, but what do they really need to do their job and be more productive. You know, everybody has a wish list of what they want. And you have to weigh that wish list about what do they really need to do their job. And we don't have to give them all the glory or the dream list, but we do have to give them the stuff they need to do the job properly. So I think going into the schools, assessing what the teachers really need versus what they want, and balancing it. So I think I'd like to go into the schools, visit the teachers, get to know the teachers and the administration, and find out what we as a board could do to make the system work even better than it does.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in your opinion, what are the top 3 policy issues in public education today?
The top 3 policy issues?
In public education?
A lot of them are, well, discipline, finances, and administration.
Elaborate on what you mean by administration.
Well, how the system is run, isn't it? You have to make the policies, the administration makes the policies and everything that affect the students and the teachers and everything. So they have to make sure they meet all the needs and do their job properly and take care of those that they're supposed to.
Thank you very much for answering the questions.
Thanks, John.
Okay, as soon as Dr. Pats comes back, we'll take a brief recess.
Did you want them all to come in, or?
Well, you have to, for the recess, you have to turn.
You want it off?
Yeah, you have to pause it for recess.
Good.
So it is,
Roman style.
The umpire says.
We thoroughly enjoyed our time in the break room, and we feel comfortable that whoever you choose will be great.
Can we all just join as one?
did you bring the snacks back in? Is this on?
You're recording, nice job.
Well, we still have 2 minutes, but, okay.
You hear that part?
Okay. Well, then, we're back in open session, and we're back in session at 7:04. So thank you very much for your interviews, and we appreciate you going through that. It's not easy for us either. So now we are on item 7, board discussion. And we've never done this either together as a board, so before we take board action, are there any board members that would like to give any comments about any candidates? When we have 6 candidates to vote on, we do have to have a majority vote, and it will be helpful if we can positively try to whittle this down a little bit. So would anyone like to start off any comments?
I can start off some comments. First, I'd just like to say that everyone was qualified in each individual way. Each one of you would be suitable to represent the district in one way or another. I think in terms of preparedness, we all saw, since we asked the same questions to each one of you, we saw differences in preparedness of past decisions versus policy decisions or able to relate to a personal decision that you may have relating to one of the questions we had. So I think throughout the process, it provided some light, I think, for each one of us on some people based on your answers and resumes, what we thought coming in, and sometimes that did change. In terms of specific questions and responses, I think Janet's question specifically on Act 10 was an interesting question for each one of you. I think each one of you provided a different answer in a different way than maybe each one of us expected. But it was interesting that each one of you focused on a portion of Act 10 or an emotional response or almost like a personal feeling, a personal takeaway from the passing of Act 10. So I think that was kind of important for each one of us to understand how you were going to respond to that question. Specifically to my question, when I asked about a representative of the community or as a representative of the school system, I really took this as a key question because the answer it depends. You're elected as part of the community, but yet you have a duty to promote the district. So they're not mutually exclusive. You truly have to view both of those at the same time. And I think a lot of you answered that question in a way where you portrayed that both were important or of interest. I'll stop there to not be the only person that's talking.
No, we're used to it.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
I would just probably state the obvious, that first, thanks everyone for coming in, and just want to state how sufficiently awkward this whole process is. So you're not the only one if that's what you're thinking. So, and like Janet said, we haven't gone through this before, so, but your answers did provide some insight, and we truly appreciate your responses, so.
And I want to say that when you're not a board member, and if you haven't been sitting out here at every meeting, sometimes you think you can do things as a board member that you can't. As far as having contact with employees, or there's just certain things you can't do as a policymaker, that it is separated. So it's understandable to us if you make certain comments that you're not totally knowledgeable about. Sometimes it takes a year to become a board member and understand things. So, and my question on Act 10, it's old, but it is important, and it does stay current right now, and I really am asked by constituents every year when the tax bill comes out, how are you utilizing that? And it's important to me, representing the citizens, and it is legislation, so we have to try to we have to balance it. It is a balancing act. We have to try to keep taxes down and keep the morale up. So that was important. I'm going to dig right in, and after reading your responses, I did come here, I'm going to say, well, with favorites, with individuals that I was impressed with more than others, and after the interviews, my mind has changed between, I'm going to say this to the board, I have a top 3 that I do prefer, and this isn't personal to anyone, I hope you can understand, we do have to choose.
Let's take it that way.
Okay, so,
Please be candid, we're good.
my mind did change after the interviews. I do have a top 3, and that would be John, Larry, and Michelle. And my reasons for that are, I think Larry and John, I really appreciate their military service. I think that adds to the board. I think their diversity, as far as their community outreach that they have, I really appreciated their answers to the questions, especially Mrs. Larson's questions. And I also appreciated Michelle, her answers too. I just think they would fit in, because we have to make this decision rather than the community. I think they would really fit into the board, to the way we are right now, to the way we process and debate and get along well. And if I have to whittle that 3 down to 2, I'm going to whittle that down to Larry and John. And I'd like to hear other opinions before I whittle that down to 1. I can go more in depth, but I'd like to hear some other comments before I go further in depth about why I like these 2 and 3. Anyone?
Well, I do like the perspective that John brings to the board, because he does not have any children at all, never has, and had any children within the district. So he represents, quite honestly, the majority of our community from that perspective, because so many people do not have children within our school district. So I know we all sit here on the board right now currently and do have children. So we do have that perspective. That is just a different perspective that we don't have right now on our board.
Okay.
I think, yeah, and I would tend to be on board with your list of 3, and whittling it down. I've known Larry for a long time, since I ran for school board, and I know that he's very civically active, and he's involved in, not somewhat at the state level. He's definitely got contacts at the state level, but he's very civically active. He's a strong Franklin resident. He's put his kids through school here, and yeah, he doesn't have the perspective of not having any children in the district, but I think he'd be a great voice to have on the board, personally.
Linda, do you have any comments?
It's a tough choice. I think they're all, bring a unique perspective. It's really hard to say what I'm really going to come down to. I like Angie's perspective. I think she brings a lot of energy to the table. I think that stood out for me. But I understand that we have to kind of come together as a group, and this, because we have to pick, 3 of us has to pick the same one. So it's just really hard for me to figure it out. And that's what I'm saying right now, because I'm really not going to, one or the other. They're all doing different things.
I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. Some of you think there are things that you want to get into that you're really not going to be able to. When I came to the board, I had some real strong thoughts on the impact I was going to have in this community. Ha ha. You can't. We're like a board of directors. We're sitting up here at the 30,000-foot level looking down, and we have to allow the administration to do their job. They're really good at it. And if we get involved with them, we might be of help, but we might just muck it up too. I don't have the experiences that a lot of you have with teaching, et cetera. So I don't know how far to push before I'm in the way. And yes, I had everybody all laid out before I got here, read through this, very impressed with these write-ups. I talked to my wife and said, we have 6 people that every one of them are better than me. Holy cow.
I agree.
It's pretty obvious. Touche. So, you're all strong candidates. I was trying to feel how you would all interact with us as board members. And I agree that Larry seems to be a person who would fit in.
I don't disagree with that. You know, I think Angie, Larry, Michelle, John, I thought your four perspectives were consistent. I thought your personalities meshed well with how we handle discussion and like to discuss topics during board meetings. You know, I also think each one of you present some experience for us that's different. It's different than what each one of us would bring to the table. Angie, your background is phenomenal. You know, it's something that I respect. I respect your opinion. We've worked on the foundation together. Same thing with Michelle. You know, both of you present numerous different perspectives that I think would be 100% valuable to the board on day one. John, Larry, both of your experiences, not solely related to education, you know, the real world experience that is truly different than any one of us has experienced, I think is 100% valuable as well. But in the order of Angie, Larry, Michelle, John, is where, you know, based on your responses to the questions, I think that I would lie.
Are you ready to take a vote then? Do you want to take a vote or discuss more? I mean, we might end up with several rounds of votes.
Mrs. Witkowski, is there any input that you might give?
I'm thinking.
Does that mean are we ready to take a vote then?
Did you have anything other than Janet's?
Find out after the vote.
We're not going to just sit here and,
That's fine. We should probably take a vote.
I think so.
okay, then we'll take one vote. You must sign your, okay, then our clerk will, Mr. Alexandrovitz will read the tallies.
Angela received 2, Larry 3, John 1.
Okay. Then that means we don't have a majority, so we can have more discussion and then take another vote. Okay. So,
Sorry, again, that was Angie,
Angie 2,
Larry.
Larry 3, John 1.
okay. So would anyone like to open up more discussion about any of the candidates? And speaking of the faction of the community that 75% of our community does not have children or no longer has children in the household. So again, that goes to Larry or John. I think Larry said his children are graduated. So I'm just going to point that out. I'm just looking at.
I think I'll chime in, one of the things that we've talked about at this board, we all can agree, is greater community engagement, greater community feedback. And I can only speak to my personal experiences, but I just know that Larry is very tied to the community with, where I see him out at civic events all the time. And doesn't mean that nobody else is, I just can't speak to my experiences with you guys. But we'll certainly be a part of the Education Foundation, you're tied into that too. But so I think as a community advocate and soliciting feedback and maybe that pipeline for communication, I feel strongly about his qualifications in that area. But this discussion would really be more toward the people who voted. Well, actually, no, never mind.
Well, I'm going to also point out, as far as legislative advocacy, we're always talking about that, and I believe Larry Gamble is very connected legislative-wise and constitutionality-wise. So I think he'd be a help with the board that way.
I know we've mentioned that some people have no children in the school, and this brings a different perspective, and it represents the majority of the people who elect us. On the other hand, I think the greatest good we can do as board members is to do the very best that we can for the children who are in the schools. Yes, they elected us, but they elected us to make sure that we do the best we can for the future leaders of our community and country. So I don't, it's not a problem having kids in school. I think that's also important.
Oh, I don't think that's what we're saying.
No, I didn't take it
Yeah.
that way. And
I mean,
I
we have
hope
to
I
be,
didn't give that.
connected with our community too.
Right.
And that's one thing we're trying to do, is to reach the community as citizens. So, I mean, right now, we're half and half as far as board members that have children and at different ages and
Yeah, I've got grandchildren.
ages of board members. So, yeah, so we're all over the
Some of us have
place.
been on the board a really long time, that does make us really old.
Yeah, that we know.
Some of us haven't been on long at all, but it's still really old.
This is just hard because now we're just trying to,
Well, I guess,
This is really hard, yeah, it is.
and this is not verbatim by any way, any shape or form. One thing that bothered me about one of Larry's answers was when asked Tim's question, your response was something like, I've fallen off the district since my kids are out of the district. So that tells me that you really haven't been following what's been going on with our district. And that to me seemed, that was a problem answer for me. That really bothered me, and it made me question, why would you want to come on this board when you've just told me you've fallen off the district and you haven't been paying attention to the district? So you may be civically minded as far as maybe our city goes or things like that, but it bothers me that you were very blunt in saying that you've fallen off the district. So I found that to be a problem.
but he knew all the other answers regarding all the issues going on with the education in the area too, though.
Well, I would disagree with that, too. I would disagree with that perspective of knowing all the other answers and being prepared. That's just my perspective. You know, we're trying to discuss this, so.
You know, I'm trying to compare apples to apples in terms of questions asked and the types of answers that were provided to us. You know, specifically to Ms. Witkowski's question, which was broad. It had a large opportunity to interpret what types of policy issues you think are at issue in public education today, whether that's at the federal level, the state level, or the local level. And looking at some of the answers provided, specifically Angie bringing up legal issues and the differing education for differing abilities, alternative education, to Larry bringing up school funding, quality teaching, and motivation. And John bringing up discipline, finances, and administration, or how the system works and is run. I think each one of those kind of sheds light on a different perspective of issues facing us today, facing this board at a meeting-by-meeting basis. We discuss policy almost every meeting, whether it's changing policy, editing policy, or eliminating policy. So I think that question brought to light a perspective of preparedness, a perspective of understanding some of the issues that we've discussed over the past last 3, 4, or 5 meetings, because we have had some pretty heavy policy discussions. I think Adam brought up a really good point about differentiating and delineating issues, and at least in providing your answers to Linda's question, I think it was easier for me to differentiate and delineate maybe some of the understandings of some of the issues that we face meeting to meeting. And in that regard, Angie, I think your answers were probably the most relevant to what we deal with. Although you didn't touch on funding, which is probably one of the biggest things that the district would probably, that a constituent would probably say is an issue for the district. So, I don't know if it would benefit us to vote again at this point. Linda, I guess, to ask the question that you asked and some of the motivation behind that and some of the answers that were provided, did I provide you with any other insight?
Well, in looking at, the mix of members that we have, we seem to be looking at that. I think Angie, again, brings a lot of energy, and she's, I think she would bring deep discussion on some of the things that we've come before us. Although Larry does talk about motivating kids, and I think some of our new programs at the high school are, go towards that, and quality teaching, that's important. I don't know much about him, though, and his involvement. You mentioned constitutionality. What was that about? His relations with the state? I don't know what he's been involved with at the state level, so
Well, from what I know about him, I know that he's familiar with legislation. Let's have another vote.
He's a poll
Before we vote.
worker.
Okay.
And he's actually at the place where I vote. I see him working all the time. His wife's there too. So I'm involved in that regard. And he did have the facts on, where we stood in the state and nationally. So, he had his pulse on all we were doing.
It was on Facebook.
Shows he was
No.
prepared.
The one candidate we haven't discussed is Candace, and I'd like to say I was very impressed with the fact that she took the time to research documents that we have online for our community. I really appreciated that she seemed to really drive home the idea of all voices mattered at the table, because I know as a board, we have struggled with that at times, and so that was very impressive to me. I thought that she answered Linda's question well. She talked about the taxpayers' needs and the engagement of our community and having an open door policy for our community, which, again, I really appreciated that. To Janet, your question, her response was, good fiscal standards, that there's got to be a balance with our, with our teachers and with our community and things like that. So I'm just throwing Candace's name out there too, because we haven't discussed Candace at all.
Should we do another vote? We can do as many as we have to.
Sure.
second vote, Angela, 2, Larry, 3, John, 1.
Okay. Okay. Um, Well, is there any hope of the board, well, we can go on discussing, and is there any hope of the board, any of the board members changing a vote, or
Would it be more beneficial for you guys to go into closed session and have us step out?
we're not allowed to go into closed session?
Would it be more beneficial for us to step out so you guys can have a more candid conversation?
Yeah.
No.
Everybody had murmured that, you know.
You're allowed to do whatever you choose. This is an open meeting, so you can do whatever you choose. Yeah.
Would it be,
Well,
if you want to ask questions?
no, let's stay in case, or if you want to ask us any questions.
No, we can't. ask- No, no. So, I mean, we're not
Well, I mean, I
children, so
think-
we can just,
I think, you know, we've obviously brought it down to 3 candidates. We've obviously voted that way twice. I don't know if it's beneficial to just go down the line, talk about the positives, negatives that each individual might have for those 3. That might be the only way to, for the discussion to affect the vote.
Well, we're either, in the case of one candidate, we're flipping 1 vote, in the case of another, we're flipping 2, in the case of another, we're flipping 3.
Right.
So, I think we all would just have to consider how we all voted, and do we think that there'd be a change of heart with that consideration? Considering the process and the answers and for the sake of filling the position too.
The way I ranked mine after Larry did not have Angela or John in the 2 or 3 position. So I'm not changing. Because I'm not going to be one of those to flip. I had other people, listed second or third.
Say that again, Alan?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I- Okay, I
understand.
ranked mine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? Top 3, Larry's first, and the next 2 are not,
Oh,
John are in, and G. So I'm not going to flip.
No, I understand what Alan said.
Well, I mean, it's no surprise we're the person who I think would fit this position the best. I also personally would like to see a separation of the school board and the Franklin Education Board. Personally, that's just me. So, and while Angie was perfectly qualified, that was one of the reasons why I chose not to go that route.
I would step down from the board if appointed, just for your information. That's a major sticking point.
So, just for the purpose of discussion here, that's what I would like to see. So I would advocate that we keep those boards separate, so. But I understand what you're saying.
I do agree with that, too. That was sort of a sticking point for me when I read your resume or your questionnaire. That did stick out to me, too, so I'm in agreement with that.
I mean, I can't ask you this question, but one of the things I can say to the board is one of the questions I was thinking about asking, which only would have applied to 5 of the 6, is we just had an open cycle for a new school board election. And we only had one other person who chose to run, Adam. And so now we have this one vacancy, and now we have a ton of qualified candidates that are trying to come in. So, but, no disrespect to Adam, but I like to see, talking about separation, the separation of school board and administrators or teachers. And so, I know we've had teachers on the board, have teachers on the board, but for me, I like to see that separation. So, while I was certainly going to keep an open mind, that was one of the things that I had going in as a disqualifier. So,
I am going to say I also like the fact that John and Larry have run for public office before. I think they are interested in public service and have been before. I think that's, that doesn't discount you, Adam, because you are running now, but Larry didn't say that in his resume, but I remember you did. And you have tried to get on in the city so I appreciate that too. I'm not interested in changing my vote either. So, anyone else?
so considering what we have, we either have someone who's willing to change their vote, or we proceed as 6. And I think this body would prefer to have 7.
I mean, I'm sure we can all tell reasons why we don't want certain people, but we're not here to be negative about people.
No.
It's not what we're here about. That's up to citizens when they vote in an election to be, and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, besides, it's all fine lines. I mean, we all agree, I think, that they're all qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are we, except for statute and things like that, to decide who's qualified? We're not here to do that.
Should we try again?
One more vote? Or no?
I mean, I'll just state this before we go to vote again. And it was, Linda brought up the point earlier about kind of the differing points of view, which I think each one of us presents on the board currently a different perspective, whether it's children out of the district, a teacher, whatever the avocation that you possess outside of the district. So I think that varied experience benefits us during each one of our discussions. Varied education background, varied location in which you gain that education, varied experiences prior to coming onto the board or being on the board for a while and leveraging that experience. So I think in that regard, both Larry and Angie present us with, really interesting options to further that discussion. A trained physician versus someone who has considerable experience in the military, flying, et cetera. I think both of those experiences provide us with a unique insight, regardless of what the issue would be, to receive a differing opinion. It's my opinion, however, with the year's experience, a doctorate level degree, I would value Angie's opinion with this board very highly on whatever the issue is, even if we would have differing opinions, which we frankly do quite often. And that's what I value. So when we were going through some of the questions and we had different answers, I truly tried to look at how someone went through and thought about their answer, how they analyzed the question. And I think Angie did that best out of all the candidates. I can 100% understand why Larry ranks at the top of your lists. But if I truly look at, if we're going to dig down on an issue, I did value Angie's opinion on some of the questions. And frankly, Larry, when you said that you were removed and didn't didn't know or didn't, paraphrasing, obviously, didn't necessarily know issues, that was a bit concerning to me, solely because it's an interview for the school board. But that doesn't discredit the value of experience that I would look to you for in answering some of the questions that we have facing us. With that said, I think it would be valuable to go through another vote, but if we end up the same way, third vote, same numbers, I don't know what actions we could take, at least at tonight's meeting.
To your point, though, we haven't seen any of these people sitting here. At our meetings
Right.
to be involved.
Right.
We can't say we've seen them look at our school board meetings online, but frankly, when you're answering our questions and the referendum comes up as the only issue out of all of when policy is our main focus in this district, and the referendum comes up as the only question answered, if you were really watching what we're doing in the district, you could have come up with a policy that's important in the district. And I'm not saying that the referendum wasn't important, but if you were really paying attention, so I'm going to say, possibly no one has been paying attention to what's going on in the district, except if you had children and you know. So I'm not going to hold that against anybody who wants to run for an office, because it doesn't mean you won't get involved once you're here. People get out of touch on things, but they want to get involved and serve. So, I respect your opinion.
No, I completely agree with that. I'm not saying that Larry's not knowledgeable on an issue. I just took it as, I wouldn't go into a specific interview and not necessarily know some of the topics. Now, you did answer some of the questions how I would have answered, and I appreciate that there's some consistency in some of the focus, but it just worried me a bit when that was one of the answers. Now, can I say that every answer from every other candidate was something that I agreed with or was impressed with their answers? No, I can't say that for every single person. So, but I completely understand where you're coming from.
Would you mind telling me what the vote was again last time?
It was Angie 2, Larry 3, and John 1.
If the vote was
Okay.
more scattered right now, I might consider changing, but
I think we can all appreciate how difficult it was for everything you guys went through tonight, because, some of those questions were, and to Janet's point, we don't have people that come to these meetings. It doesn't surprise me that not everyone knows the hot buttons or the top policy issues are. Put yourself in their shoes when I wouldn't have known how to answer some of those questions at all. And so you learn as you become involved. So I don't know that, I think we might be asking a little much of a candidate coming onto the board for the first time to think they can hit the ground running. I think we have to look at somebody who, can take their full world experience and apply it to what we're doing. And
But before I became a school board member, I sat out there a year and a half in that audience. So,
I don't think we expect anybody to hit the ground running,
Yeah.
but I will say to your point, once that notice went out in the newspaper, it did shock me that I didn't see one person out in the audience. That did bother me. I did notice that. And especially if you were gonna turn in this paperwork, I would have expected you to come to a meeting. I was surprised by that.
now that our meetings are videoed, though, I think it's hard to tell who's really keeping track.
Well, that's
It's so
true,
much
but
easier
then
to just,
I guess you could go back to what Janet said, if the hot topic was the referendum, there were other hot topics that we did discuss if you were watching it online. We did talk about plenty of policy. It's just something to think about.
I think that, if I think back a year from now, what would the board be like? Be it Angie, I think we would have some energy and some good discussions. Larry, I think you would bring kind of the same, kind of what we have now. Not that that's bad. It would be solid. It would be, I did appreciate your answers. Basic quality teaching, motivating kids, those are, you can't argue with those. But think about where it'd be a year from now with, either one. And I guess to bring this kind of around, you know, we're just going to sit here looking at each other, and Larry would be I guess I could consider flipping my vote, but I wanted to say, Angie, put your hat in the ring, or, you know, and I know she'll be at the foundation, and I've seen her work there, and so I could consider to, you know, it's like, we're trying to make this work, is what we're trying to do, trying to fill the position.
I don't know how you can assume that, though, about one candidate to the other, about what you just said, that,
I can imagine. Can't
you can imagine, but I think that was a pretty
I
bold
can
statement.
imagine how,
Since you don't really know what someone can really bring, but, okay.
That's true about all 6.
It's, I mean, it's the interviewing process. You know, frankly, with some of the knowledge that you and Tim have with Larry, knowing him previously or seeing him in the public, it's something that I have with some other candidates in relation to the foundation, you know, so it's the same type of experience that each one of us might have had with one of these candidates. I respect Linda's opinion, because I think truly, if you consider a candidate during any type of interview process, you have to consider what the candidate is going to bring to the table on day 1, what the candidate's going to bring to the table on day 30, and what they're going to bring 2 years from now. So I think that's a valid analysis. But I completely agree. I mean, we're here to work together, and like I said, I don't think Larry is a bad candidate. If I had to choose, however, the best candidate, it's the way I was voting previously. So, you know, we can take another vote, I think, in this. Debbie, I thought you were going to say something. I just woke up.
All right, then, let's take another vote.
This is positively the weirdest thing I've ever. It is very awkward.
nobody can move the board
It's so weird. Boy, I can't even imagine.
The votes are 1 for Angie, 4 for Larry, 1 for John Thompson.
Okay, congratulations, Mr. Gamble.
Congratulations.
Before you leave then, you would officially become a board member at our next board meeting then, which would be February 8th. Can you make that meeting?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so you'll be sworn in on that date, or you can come in sooner and sign a paper with Ms. Dade and still be sworn in officially on February 8th.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all for going through
Thank
this
you.
process. We know it's very awkward. It is for us too. And we appreciate you coming.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:49.